All right, today we're talking about how to evolve the focus of your business and also how to balance running two businesses at once. My guest today is Elizabeth Yang. I'll tell you more about her in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I am the host of this show, and every week we feature smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs from all kinds of companies. And if you check out the archives, we've got Netflix and Grubhub, Redfin, Gusto, Kinko's, Activation Blizzard, lots of great episodes for you to check out. And of course, this episode brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses to give to and connect to their dream relationships and partnerships. How do we do that? We do that by helping you to run your podcast. We are the easy button for a company to launch and run the podcast. We do three things, which are strategy, accountability, and full execution. And we even invented what some are calling the Wix of B2B podcasting. It's our platform podcast copilot. So if you want to learn more about all of that, you can go to our website at rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. And a quick shout out before I get to our guest, to Andy Chang, my friend of OptiNizers. He is a great guy. He is my accountability buddy. And he introduced us to today's guest, who is Elizabeth Yang. She's the CEO and founder of Yang Law Offices, and she's also a partner at OptiNizers. And she earned her bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and computer science from UC Berkeley at the age of 19. Wow. Did it in about 2.5 years. And then she also had an engineering career working at Raytheon on the B-2 bomber and at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, the JPL, on the Mars Exploration Rover. And as if that wasn't enough, then she went to law school, graduated same year as I, but that is where the comparisons go opposite directions, because I did nothing impressive after that point. But she's had a distinguished legal career and working both in IP and then also in family law, which is unusual to hear someone balancing both of those two. It's not often that people do both of those. So Elizabeth, such a pleasure to have you here today. And I always like interviewing entrepreneurial lawyers because it's unusual that lawyers can be entrepreneurial, because lawyers tend to be taught to be so careful and cautious about everything. And you got to throw a little bit of that to the wind to be an entrepreneur in the first place. But tell me about when you were a kid. You, in fourth grade, you were given this assignment by a teacher to bring stuff in to sell to each other. And wise old you brought in McDonald's toys that you gotten in free Happy Meals, and sold them to your classmates. I love that. Tell me this story.
Yeah, so my first entrepreneurial experience was in fourth grade, where a teacher allowed us to, everyone's desk is like a little store and we can sell whatever we wanted. And I decided to bring all the toys I had collected from my McDonald's Happy Meals. And I put all the toys out, and the other kids were like, oh, I want this one, I want that one. So that was like a great experience that helped me price out the items,
That's
based
cool.
on supply and demand. Like this one, I knew someone really wanted, I could price a little higher, make some more money off of it. And that was
Nice.
my very first entrepreneurial experience.
Nice. And that was back in the heyday when Happy Meal toys were great. Like, I don't know if you've taken your kids, well, your kids are a little older now, they're in high school, but the toys are not that great anymore. I mean, you used to get some real
God,
toys.
it's not the same as back in
No,
our childhood. So
I
I feel
know.
bad for our kids.
I feel bad for the landfills that are filled with a bunch of plastic, but yeah, they were, at least the toys were good, made the kids happy. So you did that, and you did you kind of have a sense that you had a better ability at negotiating with people? Because some people are really bad at negotiation. So, like, what do you think gave you that ability?
I think I was good at figuring out the value of something. If I saw that my customer really wanted it and I could price a little higher. I don't even know where I learned it from, because my parents never signed me up for an entrepreneurial class, but it was just like innate in me. Like, I'm like, okay, if you guys want this, then I know I can make this much off of you. And I didn't price every toy the same. I priced it based on how much I knew my customer wanted it.
Yeah. So you end up going in engineering, and you spent a couple of years. You worked at JPL, as I mentioned, the Mars rover. You worked on the B-2 bomber systems. Did you have a passion for space or aerospace, or was that something that you were kind of working towards?
I did have a passion. At one point in my childhood, I wanted to be an astronaut. So that's one of the reasons I applied to JPL. And I got to work on the Mars Exploration Rover. That was really amazing. But I think the reason I ended up joining Raytheon after I graduated from college was because I really enjoyed the people at Raytheon. Raytheon used to be Hughes, and Hughes had a great company culture. And when I worked at Raytheon during the summer, I thoroughly enjoyed the colleagues I worked with. So after graduating from college, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna continue my career at Raytheon.
Right. Um, and so you did that, and what were some of the highlights for that? Did you get to see the bomber flying around? Did you, what were kind of like the things that you remember from that experience?
So I didn't get to see the B-2 bomber. That was the main project I worked on, but I did get to go to the Air Force Base and got to see some of the other fighter jets like the F-15, the F-18, got to climb into the cockpit where the pilot sits and see all the controls. So that was pretty amazing to see those fighter jets in person.
You end up going back to school and you go to law school. We graduated around the same time, which was the time of the global economic crisis. Not
Uh-huh,
a great
yep,
time to graduate.
2007.
Yeah, 2007, not a great time. Well, in your words, what was it like for you coming out into that job market? It was a bit bleak not too long after we graduated.
Yeah, but when I went to law school, I wasn't planning on becoming an attorney. I was pretty happy at Raytheon staying as an engineer. I mainly went to law school just to learn about our country's legal system so I could
Mm.
be prepared if I ever encountered it in my life. And then after I graduated and I was studying for the bar exam, one of my colleagues at Raytheon told me that his neighbor was a big time partner at this law firm that specialized in intellectual property. So he makes the introduction for us, and I ended up getting a job offer from that law firm, which was very surprising because I was not expecting to get hired since I went to the University of Laverne, which is not a top tier law school, and I had zero legal experience, had never done a clerkship, had never done an internship, had zero law experience, but I didn't know that lawyers with engineering backgrounds were in such high demand in the IP
Mm.
world, especially electrical engineers. So that's why they gave me an offer with zero experience.
Mm.
And I joined the market, but 2007, when I joined, things were still pretty good. And shortly thereafter, like we all know, the market crashed. The partners who got better offers left the company and took their cases with them, took the associates with them. And you have a few big partners taking big cases. The company just imploded almost
So
overnight.
they had about 800 lawyers at their peak, and it imploded overnight. What was that experience like for you? Like, take me back to that. Did you come in the morning and people are leaving, and what was the experience like?
Yeah, it was pretty scary. We would be getting resignation notices. Oh,
Mm.
this person, today's my last day. And then all of a sudden, five other people,
Oof.
oh, we're going to this firm all at once. So it was, people were leaving in
In
herds.
droves. Wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy. And this was 2010, right? When this happened?
It was around 2009,
No.
2010.
Okay.
Yeah, end of 2009 till like middle of 2010.
So there had been other things that had happened around this time frame, like Bear Stearns and Enron collapse. So I guess that was a number of years earlier, but other like companies that had collapsed. So did it feel like you were in the midst of something like that?
It did. Yeah.
Wow.
It's like you come to work and you don't know if the office is still going to be there the next day or not.
Wow.
It's just big changes day by day.
How
Very
does
unpredictable.
how did that change going forward, your attitude towards employment, towards, what you wanted to do with your life when such a large entity that you're working for could collapse in a matter of a couple of days?
Well, I think it just made me feel like no matter how big a company is, it's not 100% like reliable. Like I can't just depend my entire livelihood on someone else's company, no matter how big it is. And if I wanted security, I would need to, I guess, take matters into my own hands and be in the managerial role or, own the company.
Yeah. You had a couple of kids around this time. Your daughter, I think a daughter and a son.
Uh-huh. Yeah, my daughter was born in April of 2009. My son was born shortly thereafter, August of 2010. So they're only 16 months apart. I had them
They're
back to
technically
back.
Irish twins, right?
Not really. They were
No.
different years. I think
Okay.
Irish twins are if they're born in the same year.
Okay. And then how did that affect things for you? You have two kids back to back in this big firm that you're working at. I imagine putting in long hours goes under. And so, what do you do? How do you pick up the pieces?
The timing actually worked out pretty well because when my daughter was born during that first year before I had my son, I was still billing 2,000 plus hours annually.
Wow.
That was our billable requirement. And every morning I get up early. My daughter would still be sleeping. I leave the house, go to the office. At nighttime, sometimes we would have happy hours to network, build business, build relationships. And I'd get home pretty late. My daughter was sleeping. So that whole first year, I barely had an opportunity to build a relationship with my daughter.
Mm,
I made good money and I can afford a nanny to take care of her. But I told myself, if this continued, my daughter's gonna grow up not knowing much of her mom because I'd be
yeah.
at the office and working all the time. So if I wanted things to change, then I couldn't continue billing that many hours or working a job that required me to work that many hours.
Yeah. And that's part of why there's so few moms, especially working moms, that work in those types of environments.
Exactly. A lot of
Yeah.
the females at the big law firms, they put their career first. They would make partner in their 40s, and then they would start having a family. And by
Mm,
that point, a lot of them are having difficulties getting
hmm.
pregnant. So
Yeah.
a lot of the conversations we had with a few females at the firm were, how they were going through the in vitro process and all their complications.
Mm,
And I was like, you know what? I don't really want to be one of
yeah.
those that focused on my career and it
So
wouldn't.
you end up joining another firm, a smaller firm. I imagine at this point it gives you a little bit more work-life balance.
It did give me work-life balance, but still, I'm reporting to someone. I don't really have control. I could get let go of any minute. I remember back at Raytheon, there was like one of my colleagues who had worked there for 20, 30 years. And then right before she was going to retire, she gets fired.
Mm,
So,
oof.
it's like when you're working for someone else, you still don't have control over employment and
Yeah.
you don't know if you're going to get your next paycheck or not.
Yeah. So what do you do next? You start two businesses
Yeah.
at the
So,
same time.
well, it just so happened that way. The first business was the law firm. I
Okay.
was like, you know what? Instead of working for someone, I have enough experience to start
Start
my
your
own
own.
practice. Yeah. And
Okay.
actually, while I was employed, a lot of my friends would come to me and ask me if I could help them with their legal issues. But the retainers at the firms I was working for was so high, they'd be
Yeah.
like $30,000 plus. So
Wow.
I have to refer my friends to solo practitioners. And so I was like, why don't I just start my own practice so I can start helping my friends and charge a much lower retainer and support, individual clients. So that's what I did. And at the same time, my daughter, my one day my nanny came home and said that she'd taken my daughter to an indoor playground. At that time, I had never heard the term indoor playground. It wasn't that popular
Yeah.
as it is now. And I was like, what's an indoor playground? I'm like envisioning a park structure, but inside a
Yeah.
facility. So I went and checked it out. And I lived in Pasadena at the time. My nanny had taken the bus all the way to South Pasadena because that was the closest indoor playground. And
Mm,
I saw the model and I was like, this is a pretty easy business idea. You get a bounce house, you get some toys, a little play kitchen. There's one or two employees working at any given time, one person at the cashier, the other person cleaning up. So it seemed to be pretty straightforward, unlike a restaurant where you need, constant
yeah.
staff and people cooking in the kitchen. So I realized there wasn't a single indoor playground in Pasadena at the time. And I was on my maternity leave, so I had a lot of time on my hands. And I took my daughter, we just started driving around town looking at empty, vacant spaces.
As one does, yeah. With a
Yeah,
newborn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talked to the different real estate brokers, got some prices, and ended up finding an empty furniture store that
Wow.
was right on Colorado Boulevard, great location, and really cheap rent. So I used my maternity leave to renovate that space and turn it into a new business.
And how did it go? Like, was it, were there challenges in the early days?
There were definitely challenges I didn't see, including getting the permits from the city. I didn't realize renovation construction was going to be that much headache. So
Mm,
that took a lot longer than I planned. But once the business was up and running, it was pretty smooth.
yeah.
But then additionally, other entrepreneurial problems arose too, such as managing employees, dealing
Did you
with.
have someone managing for you, or did you manage it yourself while you're also practicing law?
Initially, I managed on my own, and then later on, I did hire a manager to manage
Okay.
for me.
Yeah. And
But
and it's funny you mentioned the economics of it because I've been to a bunch of these with my kids, and I every time I'm at one, I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, how many kids are in here? How much did they pay? Some of them are going to buy a snack from the snack bar, and that staff person can't be that expensive. So did you find it was worth the headache? Was it a license to print money, or is it more complicated than that?
well, it was profitable. So I ended up opening two more. I
Okay.
actually purchased one in West Covina
Okay.
and rebranded it to Magical Playground.
Mhm.
And then I also opened one with another partner in the city of Whittier. So at
Mm.
my peak, I had three indoor playgrounds and I
Okay.
had my law practice that I was
Wow.
growing too. So at some point, I was like, both are doing great, both are successful and taking up my time, but I need to focus on one or the other. If I focus on the playground, I can work on franchising it, opening a lot of stores across the country, but then I don't think I would be able to focus on growing my law practice. And
Yeah.
even though the playground was profitable, it's not as profitable as the law firm. The law
Yeah.
firm has much higher margins.
Sure. So you focus on the law firm, and you actually initially were focused on IP. Now you said you spend about 80% of your time on family law. You end up going through a divorce. Not everyone goes through something like that and then decides, oh, I'm going to shift my practice towards this. So talk to me a little bit about what that experience was like and why you decided also to then focus on it as a practice area.
It was just like a supply and demand thing. So I go through a 4-year divorce. It's basically like a 4-year college in family law. I learn everything there is to know about child custody, child support, asset division, even restraining orders.
Mm,
And during these 4 years, family law is like the hot topic. Anytime I'm hanging out with friends, I'm talking about my divorce case. So
yeah.
pretty soon, my circle of friends all know that I've been going through this for 4 years. And
And you
anytime
had a lawyer representing you during this time, or
I
were you
had
doing it
five
yourself?
different lawyers.
Five
I
different
went through
lawyers.
5 different law firms.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Is it
my
why
friends,
was that? Was it hard finding someone that you jived with, or why was it so challenging?
well, the whole family law industry in and of itself is a conflict of interest. So if a lawyer helps you settle the case, they make less money. If
Right.
they help you drag it on and add fuel to the fire, they can end up taking all your assets at the end, right?
Yeah.
So it's a whole conflict of interest. So to find good lawyers that really just want to act on your interest and actually encourage you to make amends with your ex and settle the case and become friends, it's really hard to find lawyers who are going to do that.
Because it
They
goes against their own economic interest.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you want to fight, they'll okay, yeah, we'll help you fight.
Yeah.
You want to file this motion? Sure, we'll help you file this motion and then
Right.
and billing all these attorney fees.
Right. Right. So what happened next? So after you go through this 4-year process, you decide, well, I've learned all about it. I can do this better than some of the other lawyers out there.
It wasn't even a conscious decision. Friends just started coming to me. Oh, I want to file a divorce with my spouse. You went through it. Can you help me with the knowledge you have? So I just started taking on friends as clients. And then and then it got so popular that I was like, you know what? I want to add this onto the website as an actual practice area. And back then I had a partner in my law firm. He decided that it would change the branding and reputation. It wouldn't be good for marketing. So we decided to go our separate ways. And my new law firm, that was just my own, focused mainly on family law.
Okay.
And people just, there was way more clients asking for family law services than there was for IP, especially during the pandemic. During the
Uh,
pandemic, our law firm ended up tripling in size from four
wow.
lawyers to 12 lawyers because the demand for family law cases skyrocketed
Because people were forced to confront their marriage during
during the
the pandemic.
quarantine.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. You end up forcing two people to live together in a confined space. They either
Yeah.
realize they love each other and love the extra time, or they realize they can't stand each other.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
heard a few stories. I'm sure we all did. How did you avoid that conflict that you saw in other lawyers as you moved into this area?
Well, I would share my own story with my clients and tell them, like, you can either follow in my footsteps and make the same mistakes and end up paying for my kids' college tuition, or you can learn from my mistakes, be the bigger person. I tell my clients, you have to treat your ex with more dignity and more respect and more patience than when you guys were married.
Mm,
And a lot of them are like, no, that's not possible. My ex is, such and such. I'm like, actually, it's not that difficult because you're not living with the person anymore. You're not spending 24/7 with them. You're just seeing them here and there for child custody exchanges, or for parent teacher conferences or whatnot. And this is for people who have children. And so it's actually very doable. So once they realize that they can treat their ex with more patience, more respect than they were married, it improves their relationship and the divorce goes a lot smoother.
so a big part of it then is kind of client selection, making sure that you are working with the right clients to begin with. Because if someone at the outset says like I can't do that, then they're not a good client for you to work with.
Not necessarily. There are clients who don't heed my advice and they said, no, you don't know my ex. They're different. We need to fight it out. So if they need to get the fight out
They
of
got to
their
learn the lesson
system,
sometimes, right? Yeah,
yeah, we still
yeah,
litigate for them.
yeah. So you started this firm, it looks like in 2016. The pandemic, of course, hit in 2020. How was the shift from having a partner running a firm with a partner to running the firm with just you?
Um, it's different. There's like advantages and disadvantages. Advantages are you get more control, you get more flexibility. You don't have to ask someone else for their opinion. But on the other hand, the disadvantages are you're responsible for everything, right?
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
you don't bring in enough business, then you can't pay the bills and your whole company can implode. So you don't have anyone to rely on when you're the one and only owner.
Yeah. So you end up actually in 2023 starting OptiNizers, which is, well, I'll let you describe what it is, but a remote staffing agency.
Yeah, it's a remote talent business. We outsource Filipino talent. So
Hmm.
all of our staff are from the Philippines, and they can work on anything ranging from administrative tasks such as scheduling or checking emails or making phone calls to something more specialized like social media and marketing, website design, or even we've got like licensed lawyers in the Philippines doing paralegal work for law firms here, or licensed CPAs in the Philippines doing bookkeeping for companies in the US. So
Yeah.
anything that can be done virtually and remotely can be done by our staff.
And I assume that that was something that you harnessed in your own law firm.
Yes, we started using virtual assistants several years ago. I hired one person to help me basically be my personal assistant, scheduling calls, scheduling meetings with me. And then I realized, you know what? There's actually a lot of talent out there. So we hired a paralegal to help with filling out forms and doing
Hmm.
even legal research. And then we hired a bookkeeper to help us send out invoices and do collections. So right now we have 7 virtual assistants working in our law firm. And
Mm.
so when I met Andy through EO, and he said that he had just started this new virtual assistant company and wanted to bring me on to do marketing with my big network, I was like, of course, I believe in this kind of company, and I believe that virtual assistants really can help companies and professionals here in the US. So I'd love to help spread the word.
What was it about that that request from Andy that made you feel that, that 1 + 1 would equal 3, that the partnership that would be a good partnership, and that you could bring something to the table and he could bring something to the table and it would be a good pairing?
Well, actually, it has to do with our third partner, Duke, who lives in Manila. He's an EO Philippines member. So my family and I planned a vacation to the Philippines in for New Year's, like winter break, about 3 years ago. And I had never been to the Philippines. I didn't know how heavily they looked at the holidays. So we went there. I'm usually a very spontaneous person, so we didn't make any dinner reservations, or taxi ride reservations. I was just going to go there and play it by ear. Once I got there, Andy's like, "Did you make any reservations? It's New Year's Eve." I'm like,
Hmm.
"No, we're just going to see what's open." He's like, "There's not going to be anything available.
Hmm.
Everything's going to be booked."
Huh.
He's like, "I need to introduce you to Duke." And
Huh.
Duke ended up inviting us to his house for
Hmm.
New Year's Eve. I was a
Hmm.
complete stranger. He had never met me before, but it just goes to show the hospitality of the Filipinos.
Hmm.
They took me into their house. We ended up, our family and their family, having New Year's Eve dinner. When we were supposed to leave Manila, there was a big problem with the air traffic control towers that shut down the entire airport, and we
Hmm.
were stranded at the airport.
Hmm.
Duke comes back to the airport, picks us up. We end up spending the night at his house, in his guest house, and he took us around town and was super hospitable. And we ended up becoming really good friends. I came back to the US, and Andy said, "Hey, Duke and I both want you to join." And I
Hmm.
was like, "I would love to be partners with you guys. You guys are amazing."
Oh, that's cool. Before we wrap up, I want to ask about one other thing. So you, like I, share an interest in local government involvement, and you were recently elected mayor pro tem of your city, which is Monterey Park, California. And you also served in Parks and Rec, um, like Amy Poehler kind of story, which I did as well, and the design review board. Talk a little bit about what that has been like for you, especially with a background in law. I found that, having a background in law can be really helpful in like hashing out regulations and laws and things like that on a local level.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I'm very passionate about community service and volunteer work, giving back to the community. So I've served on 5 different commissions in our city for the last 15 years.
Mm.
And folks have been asking me to run for public office for many years too. I've always said no in the past because my children were younger, but now that they're both in high school, I need less of my time. I finally said yes this time around. I ran and I got elected. And it's been 3 to 4 months since I've been in office. It's been a really great experience. I'm learning so much about the city. My first week after getting sworn in, I had a 3-hour meeting with the city manager and the city attorney. They gave me 2 big binders with all the confidential cases, projects, even litigation that the
Mm.
city's involved in. And I was like really grateful that I had a legal background because I was able to understand a lot of the legal terminology. I think someone who doesn't have a legal background might have some trouble understanding the specificities of the ongoings in a city, but there's a lot of overlap between the legal world, between how a city runs, and then I'm learning a lot more about local government, and I love learning, so it's
Yeah.
been eye-opening and a great
One more
experience.
one more thing to balance. That's super impressive how you can get all these things done. Elizabeth, this has been really interesting. Tell us where people can go to learn more about you and learn about OptiNizers and Yang Law offices and everything else.
Yang Law Offices, the website's just the name yanglawoffices.com, or Instagram handle is also at Yang Law Offices. Optinizer, same thing, optinizers.com. So it's a play on words between optimize and organize.
Hmm.
So Optinizers, and the same thing with Instagram. It's at Optinizers.
Cool. All right, Elizabeth, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.